We should hit the Jazz next, right?
We should.
Start with the draft. Taylor Hendricks at 9. I'm
Yes.
sure you have no opinion there. Keyonte George at 16, who also looks
Yes.
really good. Brice Sensabaugh at 28.
Yes.
Got John Collins for Rudy Gay and a 2026 second via the Grizzlies. Renegotiated and extended Jordan Clarkson's deal. So now it is essentially 3 years, around $51.9 million. I think it can go up a little bit. I don't know if you have that or not. Signed Omer Yurtseven for 2 years, about $5.5 million with a partial guarantee on the second. This didn't really amount to anything, but I do want to credit them for a sneaky Paul Reed offer sheet that had all these contingencies in it that were clearly designed to make him less palatable if he stayed with the Sixers, and the Sixers then did match it. 3 years.
It was also designed for like social media to run rampant with, like just the jokes we saw about Joel.
So fun.
Yeah, that was so great.
I just it's kind of a dick move, honestly, because now I think like some of these offer sheets are going to start getting even more calculatedly punitive for the retaining team. But I enjoyed it. I respect it. It was fun. I think that's pretty much it for the Jazz. You've got it here. Signed Joey Hazer and Johnny Juzang to 2-way contracts.
They waived Vernon Carey, so I failed the Jazz on this bridge.
This was a great offseason, right? Like, I almost have no notes.
I was going to ask you, is there anything that you didn't like about their offseason? I think the only thing that you can say is they took on a lot of John Collins, and could that cap space, could they have been more aggressive with that? Because we're going to compliment them for the Paul Reed contract, but like they could have done some fun stuff with bigger name free agents then. Like they would have been an interesting Austin Reeves team. I still believe in John Collins, so I'm just all aboard. Like that's the value for John Collins. There is sort of like a weird vision for this team now in the front court where we know Lauri Markkanen can play the 3, but you have Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler and now John Collins into that fold. So you do have these 4, like, not bigs, but you have these 3 forwards, 3 guys who should all be playing a lot at power forward still. Like Lauri Markkanen is still going to be the biggest of mismatches when he gets to play the 4 offensively anyway. So throwing that into the fold is a little bit weird. And I will say, you didn't have any issue. I could see some people like already not liking the Jordan Clarkson renegotiation extent. I thought that was smart.
I think it was. I bumped on it initially just because like I think Clarkson's fairly overrated, but he kind of he matters to this team, and it's not like they added some ridiculous number to it. Like and really it's structured in a weird way, right? So where he gets basically $23.5 million next year, but then it drops to like 14 in the out years, right? Yeah. So it's like it's whether you love Jordan Clarkson or you think he's a little overrated, like I do, that's just like good business because he's at $14 million a year, next, not this season, but next and the one after, like that's totally fine. That's below starter level money by a significant amount. And he's at the very least like can start for you and it will score points. Like, right. That's the Jordan Clarkson experience.
And he improved slightly as a passer last year too. So to do that kind of like as late, a lot of that I think was just the spacing and also kind of the lack of other options. But so like the projections of what he's going to be worth in the salary cap in the final 2 years are 9.9% and 9.1%.
Yeah.
It's just no brainer. And look, maybe it makes him like I think that was just a home run. I think you look at this roster and say they're still kind of light on caps lock wings. And I really like Keyonte George, who I knew very little about like before they got him. And maybe he kind of turns into your primary playmaker, but you don't have that right now either. And so now you've brought in some other kind of just like, like John Collins is a below average passer for his position. Mm-hmm. And like, will Walker Kessler or Lauri Markkanen make improvements there? What does Taylor Hendricks looks like? He's not, I didn't really love Jarris Walker, but he's the better passer than Taylor Hendricks, but I love Taylor Hendricks. I think this was probably not the perfect offseason. And so I just give them a flat A because there's I think but there are just some like functional voids that could they have looked at addressing a little bit more cleanly. You're in the infancy of a rebuild. And I think the fact that they didn't kind of try to accelerate the process or enter this offseason thinking about need specifically, like, yeah, some of these players they need, but like John Collins is a pure value play. That's not a need when you look at the roster. And so I give them a lot of credit for what they did. And just really quickly on the Paul Reed contract, I want to see players have so little like agency and restricted free agency. The fact that these deals might be available to them, and I like the idea of these gamesmanship. I would just say I would have loved to have seen Utah been a little bit more aggressive with like the John Collins trade. Feels like it might have been available later on as well too. So like, could you have just tried and waited out your cap space a bit? Again, I can't ding them like for anything here. They get an A.
Yeah, I think it's an A- for me. And you mentioned, Collins' deal is, you got a couple more years on that, and it's a number that's not great if he's going to be Atlanta John Collins from last year. But I think it's possible and maybe even likely that the Jazz kind of look around and it's like, what's the last free agent we really signed? What does this cap space even mean? Let's fill it with John Collins. We've got all these firsts. So now we've got like a $26 million salary that we can throw in there with first. And if we want to trade for somebody, like that's an option now. I think that's the most favorable way to frame the Collins acquisition, alongside the fact that it's just like they gave up nothing to get him. So yeah, it's an A-. We didn't even talk about Hendricks, so I know you I like him a lot
That's
too.
just like, I cannot wait to see him and Kessler and Markkanen play together. Like, I think that's the front court. And I think also the Hendricks Collins Markkanen combination is interesting because I think it gives you a way to navigate the defensive minutes while also being extremely versatile on offense. Like that, you could play 5 out with those 3. Yep. And also, you made a good point about Collins. There's more risk. This is not what Detroit did, where, spoiler alert, Laz Jackson, we did the Detroit Pistons look ahead, which will go live, I think, next week sometime, was shocked at how much we love the Pistons offseason.
Really?
We've had some YouTube commenters that were shocked as well. I was like, apparently we said some bad things about them last year, but they did sign Marvin Bagley for 3 guaranteed years, so they deserved it.
I could say some bad things about that right now. I'd love to.
But like, it didn't roll over their flexibility per se, because John Collins, like, that deal goes out for 3 more years. And like, that's the risk. And if you don't love it, especially when you have Hendricks and Kessler and Markkanen, I get it. But just from a pure value play of what John Collins was 2 years ago. And when's the last time we saw someone who's good, even if you didn't think he was a fringe all-star, where his team watched him be good in a certain amount of way and then just kept saying like, no, we're going to continue to take away from him and make his life harder, like, repeatedly.
Yeah. No, that just tanked his value. And now you get him for Rudy Gay in a future second. So congratulations, Jazz.